And I've noticed that more and more academies are hanging art on their walls.
There are.
Which is really awesome, because that used to not be a thing.
Not be a thing at all.
At all, no.
Yep.
I also like the black belt photo of you, looking like distinguished. That's
Looking
for sale.
tough and cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one. We need to get one of you on there.
That'd be a good idea.
I want to get a black belt photo.
That's it, like the
You want a photo of me?
No,
peak
me.
of my man strength.
Oh, we
period.
should have a
Man
photo.
strength is peaking, maturity is peaking, I'm the right rank, everything.
Maybe we should do a photo shoot. We could get a photographer to come over and we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
all have
yeah.
our jiu-jitsu portraits done.
Podcast photo
That'd be
shoot.
really
That'd be
cute.
epic.
Podcast
Well, or
photo
even just
shoot.
for
I feel
everybody.
like everyone
anybody
needs
who
their
wants
black
one.
belt portrait.
Yeah.
I feel like, because I still do have a collection of all the black belts that I trained with and stuff, like their black belt portrait.
I think it's kind of cool. Yep. A lineage shrine.
Yes.
It's
Very cool.
like, yes, and which led us to one of our topics, like how important is lineage?
Yeah.
It is both important and not important at the same time. Another Hegelian dialectic.
I
Yeah.
considered that bust up there to be like the lineage guy.
Yeah, I like him.
That bust?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That bust is chuta palabra
That's like the headmaster up there.
of all
Yeah, that
grappling
bust
arts.
is sick. There's so much cool stuff in here.
He is like the master of all grappling arts. The toughest man ever to have walked the earth.
Hell yeah. All right.
Also made by Chris.
Yes, I made him.
All right. Well, let's get into
Now
our
that
topic.
art is dead. Okay.
So, another one back again in the garage. Today we got a topical episode.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But first, we're joined by Chris Haueter. And in line with today's episode, 6th-degree black belt under Higan Machado, but who is a current student under Hickson Gracie as well.
That's correct.
Is that fair?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Clean? Fair?
That's correct.
Okay. We've got Melissa Haueter, 3rd-degree black belt under Chris Haueter. We've got John behind the lens.
0 black belts.
0 black belts.
Clear belt. That's what we call that. You have a clear belt. We can't see it yet.
Soon to be. And then I'm the producer, Tobin.
Who's a black belt?
Who's a black belt?
There's a black
Just a
belt.
plain one.
And recently received his judo black belt as well.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh,
no.
snap.
Soon.
You have a judo
Someday.
brown belt.
You have a judo brown belt.
Judo brown
A
belt.
judo
yeah.
brown belt. Honorable judo brown belt.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be a judo brown belt.
And one day we will have Hamid here, who was Iranian national judo coach. Or no, he coached for
He's
the Americans.
American.
Yeah.
An Iranian champion.
No, I don't think so.
He
No,
grew up in
I'm
Iran.
getting this confused.
I think he is a USA judo coach.
USA judo coach.
He's done
yeah.
whatever you need to do to be
Yeah.
formally a USA
Yeah.
judo
Yeah, I
coach, and
don't
he
know.
trained with a lot of the he was in that Olympic training group.
Yes. In the Olympic training group.
He was Kayla Harrison's one of her main training partners for her last Olympic run.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I love judo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I
Someday.
love the art. I hate the sport and politics of judo.
Yeah.
Which I'm sort of the same way with jiu-jitsu. I love the art. I can't stand the various boxes it gets stuck in, whether it's the IBJJF box or the This Academy strict rules box. But the art I love.
Well, we're talking about some boxation today.
Let's box
Because
this in.
Put it in a box.
We're doing belts episode number 2 today because
episode
we did belts number 1. We talked about the belt systems, some of the philosophy behind them, kind of discussed whether the box of the belts was good or not. And we kind of came to the conclusion that the belt system served a pretty good purpose in if you have the understanding that the idea is that we want this to be a martial art that all people can engage in, and we want to have it be uplifting for all different types of people. It seemed like it was a good thing for engagement with lots of people. And the sports that had less belts or no belt seemed like they funneled the whole sport towards athleticism only, because that was the only indicator of progress, was how athletic you became. It's kind of what we ended up figuring out from talking about it. But we left out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu what each belt means.
How could we do that?
So today we want to go white to red belt. We want to have a discussion about what each belt means, starting from white going all the way to red?
Well, I would always start with as an artist dreamer that I am. I like to picture hypotheticals and imaginary worlds, and I picture my imaginary dream academy somewhere near Lothlorien in the Elven Kingdoms, and there's a waterfall, and you go behind the waterfall, and there are the mats. How would Chris Haueter run that school? Where I have all day, every day, I don't have to worry about money. I just am going to produce the best jiu-jitsu artists and athletes that I possibly can. And in that world, the way I would run belts would be much more similar to what I understand being the old Japanese karate way, which is, I believe, spun off into the other Japanese arts, their belting system. So you have a white belt woven out of herringbone weave tight, high quality cotton. And because you don't have washing machines everywhere, and you can't just constantly wash everything, the hygiene practices were very much organized around not being able to wash things all the time. The mats were straw, made for impact, not for rolling around. And your white belt would eventually wear to where it was brown, hence the brown belt. You could tell by looking at a worn, dirty white belt that it was a brown belt. Then when you are awarded your black belt, that belt, over it is woven a black satin cloth. So then when that black wears through, it goes back to the original white belt. So that's my metaphorical dream of the belts. However, I understand the practicality of that is impossible. And the hygiene is now impossible.
I like that your metaphorical dream has hygiene situation that's like less than perfect.
Yeah.
It includes like a little bit of dirt.
Well, it's like I was watching on the plane the other night coming back from Japan. I watched Napoleon, which is a wonderful movie, especially if you're into history, whether you're into military history, the history of the Enlightenment, what happened, because that was during the period that the American Revolution happened, where people were challenging monarchies everywhere, where we were realizing that someone who starts out as a good populist can also end up becoming a tyrant. People were rereading the Greeks to understand how did democracy fall again in Rome, and but in that era, people got sick and died all the time from various illnesses, and they didn't understand, because it was also the dawn of understanding germ theory, right? And what killed troops, which was often illness, whether it was syphilis or other things. So anyhow, I thought it was interesting watching, because we think about now, we're all very hygienic. I wash the gis after one use.
Okay.
Don't I?
Yeah, but I mean, calling us all very hygienic, I think it's kind of like a scale, right? Like some people use soap and wash our feet and our body all the time, and some people don't use soap.
But compared to back then,
You're like, who doesn't use soap? I'm going to not tell who doesn't use soap on every part of their body.
It's true. I rarely soap my back because I can't reach.
We can't. Most of us can't reach our back.
I watch my pits and my nuts.
You have a scrub brush?
I actually had, for a while, I had this really great thing. It was like a plastic towel. I don't know. It was like that. You know the loofah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
loofah.
It was like the loofah, but not all scrunched up. It was an actual towel of that material.
A towel loofah, and you would loofah your back?
You could do
hygienic.
this.
He is
And
hygienic.
you could stretch your shoulders
And
doing
you could do it down the center too.
Oh, butt floss?
TMI Tobin.
No butt flossing.
So how does Napoleon relate to belts? I'm just
Oh, it's the
curious.
hygiene. He's talking about the hygiene.
Oh, the hygiene of
Well,
Napoleon.
it's the hygiene, and also a period of time in which certain people could not become high-ranking officers because they aren't highborn.
Oh, okay. So
And
we couldn't be black belts if we weren't highborn.
Jiu-jitsu in the early days was kind of that way. A certain group could get the black belt. Others
Poor
could.
people were busy
Right.
working or just trying to get by, whereas
Right.
there was the elite class that could surf and
Yes.
train and...
But even above that, there was an elite amongst the elite. Like only a certain amount are ever allowed the red belt. No matter how much longer I live or train, technically I can never be a red belt.
Well, we'll find out
Because I'm not a founder.
You need 48 years of training to get a red belt, according to the IBJJF.
So if I lived to be 120,
and if you
I
started at 24,
it's not going to happen.
72 is when you would be eligible for your red belt.
Oh,
right?
okay.
24 plus 48. Did I do my math right?
I got to stick around.
60, 72. So I'm just curious if the IBJJF, which is what we follow, because that's the people who were first to market with a ranking system that's online, that you can find the poster.
It's the industry standard.
The industry standard is following the IBJJF, which we're fully certified with and comply with and have our students follow if they want to participate in those competitions, to follow the timeline. So that's why I have it up here, because to me, I always forget what it means. But that's like, if Chris lives to 72, he could get a red belt.
But yes, that's true. So there is a timeline for IBJJF. We talked about that in the last episode. But this one we want to explain. It's more than just a timeline. And these belts mean different things, like in the world of jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And so, I think one interesting thing to ponder is, why is it that somebody like Khabib Nurmagomedov, if he came into a jiu-jitsu room, he would wear a white belt? So what does the white belt mean? What does it signify? And why is it that...
Well,
Can I talk
go
first
ahead.
for a second?
And this is Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
What I'm thinking about is that this means different things to different people. It's not, there's not one blanket answer, like the white belt means this, the blue belt means this, purple belt. This is not how it works. There are, which I think we might have touched on last time, that there are schools of thought where they actually put out material and say, this is what it means. But that's not the school of thought that we prescribe to.
No.
We
Much more
prescribe
nebulous.
to that it's up to interpretation by the individuals who are bestowing it on others and who are wearing it, and that my interpretation of the belt is highly influenced by my coach, who goes around and says what he thinks they mean, but that he also allows the freedom of each black belt and each individual to decide what it means for their group. So it's not a one size fits all. And I feel like just like I said, my interpretation is highly influenced, but I think I add my own spin and my own twist. So if I award a blue belt, it might be a little different than if Chris awards one.
And I think in my rule of threes, I imagine sliders. A slider where it's white on one side, black on the other. And that slider slides through and starts becoming light blue, turns blue, then goes to purple, then turns brown, and then black. And each of those are mind, body, and spirit. And some people I find are brown, black belt in body and mind. They have all the knowledge, they're super fit, and all that stuff. But Khabib. But the spirit of the art, to embrace the art of jiu-jitsu, is a different thing. And that's becoming part of the quote-unquote family. And that the family of the jiu-jitsu. And then that subgroups off into each organization, branch, and thing. So when I evaluate, I'm evaluating you based on your own personal potential, how you relate to others within our group, and how you relate to others within the broader outside group of jiu-jitsu, the bigger jiu-jitsu family.
And before you train, you're a clear belt.
Yes.
You are, because you can't see it. You don't have one. So
You
what
don't
does
have
a
belt.
white belt means? It means that you went to class.
That's your
Yep.
first
You don't
belt.
have to ever roll. You just have to show up and do something, and you can wear a white belt for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So,
And
for
if you don't wash it, it'll become brown.
there you go.
Maybe.
So for someone like Khabib or any of that, I mean, you see clips online of these top
Who
level.
is Khabib? Can you just tell me? Because I'm
he's
really
like,
curious now.
He's like MMA champion wrestler, Eastern
from Dagestan, right?
European phenom, a grappler.
But
who's
he does no
kicked
gi,
everybody's
so he doesn't
ass.
have a belt.
Yeah.
I just think they grapple in Dagestan. I don't
Yeah.
think they have like martial arts schools. They do judo and then they grapple. I
So
think
they do no-gi submission wrestling,
Yes,
which a lot
basically,
of people
yeah.
do no-gi submission wrestling, and a lot of no-gi submission wrestling people want to give their students belts,
Yep.
and they do.
Or some form of rank.
The issue that happens is once the guy puts a gi on, he might be totally unaware of collar chokes, and he might get submitted easily
Grips
Right.
and grabs.
So-
because it does change the game.
Yep.
So, in my opinion, I kind of think if you want to do some kind of belt system, I don't think that it 100% equates. I think you do need to
doesn't.
put the gear on to get a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or American
Yeah.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever we want to call it. Because, like Chris would always say, he's not that into the terminology, but what it means, if you're going to get the blue belt in whatever it is we're doing with a gi on, then you should be aware of collar chokes and not just get submitted.
Yeah, so it's almost like the white belt is that you have, if you tie a white belt around your waist in the context of being at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu situation, you've accepted the fact that there is an art form called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and that there's stuff that you don't already know, or there might be stuff that you don't already know, or you're curious to figure out what that is.
Yep.
And that's the white belt, is you've decided to start on that path of discovery as far as what this art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu
Well, and
has to offer.
White belt is the humble belt. You are humbling yourself and opening your mind to join this thing we do. The blue belt is the eager belt. You're learning stuff. You're getting new materials every day. You're getting good. Hell, if I keep learning at this rate, I'll be a black belt in 6 months because every class you're picking up something new and improving. The purple belt then is the cocky belt. Because, wow, you've got there. You're giving black belts a hard time even. You're smoking these blue belts. And then you get humbled and you realize that, wow, now learning is incremental and a lot harder. And I'm not just being handed knowledge anymore. It's kind of like you've turned into an adult and thought you knew everything, and now you're being humbled, realizing I don't know shit yet. Then that humble part, you're the brown belt again.
It's confidence.
The
Brown belt is
confidence, yes.
You go through.
But
I know his speech is better than him.
you have to humble the cockiness in
become
order to get confident. Then you're a brown belt, which is just the holding pattern to get the black belt. Is can you remain consistent and committed? That's
And confident.
the art part of this. But then the competition part, which is one of the threes, that's about where are we going to place you in a tournament. So that's another thing we have to analyze regarding the color of your belt, right?
But can we finish
Yeah.
the confidence when you get your black belt then becomes you're humble again.
You're humble
Because
again.
black belt, you're like, oh my God, I'm a black belt. Am I really ready for a black belt? And then you're a target. Everybody's like, the brown belts aren't as much of a target as the black belt. So when you're a new black belt, it's a humbling experience
Yes.
again until you grow into having your black belt for about 3 years and you get your first stripe.
And you're eager.
Then you become eager again, like the blue belt. And then you go to your second stripe and you become cocky.
Yep.
It's like a thing. Second
Yep.
stripe, 6-year black belts, you're
Cocky.
pretty dangerous and you're pretty cocky. And then you start becoming confident again, right?
Yep.
And that's your third degree.
Yep.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yep.
Right? So, and then by your fourth degree, you're back to being humble again because you're so banged up after 15
Yep.
years or whatever it is of being a black belt.
And
that
then you
everyone's
rechange
kicking
your
ass
whole
again.
game. And you rechange your whole game and go back to being humble
And you're
again.
humble. Yeah.
Let's start this whole art new.
It's like the Dunning-Kruger effect.
It's the Dunning-Kruger
That's what I was
effect
thinking
being
about.
overridden.
It
yes.
fits the Dunning-Kruger effect like perfectly.
I don't know
feel
what
like.
that is.
It's this. So it's basically a chart of the x-axis is time,
Okay, I understand.
and the
X-axis.
y-axis
Uh-huh.
is confidence. And
Time
so
and
the way that
confidence,
this
okay.
chart looks is it's basically at the very beginning, right? It's all low, right? Like no time, no confidence. And then over a short period of time, your confidence skyrockets and it gets really high.
With a little bit of knowledge
A little
comes
bit of
a
knowledge.
lot of confidence.
A lot of confidence.
That's what it means.
And then they call that the peak of Mount Stupid,
Yes.
right?
Oh.
And then you enter
'Cause you're
the
cocky, right?
the valley of despair.
Yes.
So shortly after that, you gain a little bit more knowledge over time,
And you
your
realize
confidence
you're an
goes-
idiot.
You realize you're an
And you
idiot, and
plummet.
your confidence goes, and it tanks, and then like slowly over time, your confidence gets raised as you
Yes.
Okay,
keep
yeah, that's
practicing.
And the
interesting.
reason why everyone knows this is approximately 10 years ago, where
Everyone.
these two psychologists came up with, they were applying it to online political commentary. And one of my favorite books of 2015, Tom Nichols, wrote The Death of Expertise. And part of that came on the internet, where suddenly everybody was an expert on land warfare because of the Iraq warfare. They couldn't even point out Iraq on a map.
Yeah.
Everybody became a medical expert. They would look up on WebMD. Oh, I know how to cure it, blah, blah. They don't even understand fucking germ theory, organic chemistry, all these things. So in that effect, most experts realize that we barely know a little. So they're the humble ones. But nobody listens to the people who say, well, I'm not sure. Maybe the virus is blah, blah. They listen to the know-it-all. So this phenomenon was happening online where the rise of idiocracy was happening
I love that
before
movie.
our eyes. It's a documentary.
If I'm stranded at sea in the sea of chaos and there's one guy hanging onto a raft, I want to be with that guy,
You want to be with that guy.
right? Yeah, I want to get on that raft.
Which is also why we have evolved to be creatures that are attracted to confident human beings.
Yeah.
Even if we know, oh, the guy might not know what he's talking about, but he sure fucking says it with conviction.
Yeah.
I'm going with that guy.
Yeah.
Rather than choosing the guy to operate on our heart who says, well, we've made a lot of advancements, but we really don't know that much about the chemical effects of the anesthesia and how that'll work when I'm operating on your... That's too complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, but did we share last time about how we decide if somebody's a blue belt or not?
No, that's what we're trying to do right now. So yeah, what are the indicators?
So we decide they're a white belt because they walked in.
Yeah.
Get rid of that one.
Check.
How do they get their blue belt? It's not just because they showed up, right? For me, I'm going to talk about me first and then you add on it. For me, the blue belt, again, like Chris said, it's personal potential. I don't want to see the person just using strength, but rather using technique. And I believe that one of the most important concepts in jiu-jitsu, the way that we practice it, is base. The ability to hold a base. So that person should have a base, whether it's from 2 knees down, combat base, standing base, or preferably all three, where they can interchange between the three and start a pass. I'm not so concerned that they finish pass and submit everybody, but I don't want to go and they fall over. I want that to feel solid. I want to feel that they are trying to pass my guard. I want to know that all that's happening. And from the bottom, I believe that this is the way that Chris always taught us. I couldn't get a blue belt until I had some concept of guard, because guard is what differentiates our art from a lot of other arts. Like other arts have base, but not a lot of other arts have the concept of guard.
None of them.
Almost none of them, or they start to borrow it, right?
And then they claim they always have.
So having the ability to perform some techniques from guard, close guard against a live resisting opponent, and also to be able to have some sense of recovering the guard and retaining the guard when it's opened. And that's what I'm mainly looking at in a blue belt.
And the spirit of that, and you could feel when a person becomes comfortable in guard. That's the spirit part. Then you have the mind part, which is, do they have the 3 keys of guard retention? And then within all this, going back to the Dunning-Kruger effect as well, if we think of it as chess, as an analogy, once you know how every piece moves without having to ask, wait, is it the pawn that jumps over and I get? You're not a blue belt. But when you can play the game.
I'm a blue belt in chess.
Once you can play the game of the jiu-jitsu, whether it's IBJJF, open mat, whatever, from my perspective, this is very old school, then you're a blue belt. Now that slider has moved up because we started to allow white belts to compete. Now back from my experience in the olden days, if you're a white belt, that means you're not ready to fucking compete.
I didn't compete as a white belt.
I did. It was fun.
But
it was a good experience for me.
That has changed.
Yeah.
But this is my coach.
Whether that's bad or good, I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is it's made The current 3 to 4th stripe white belt was what used to be 25 years ago a blue belt.
Well, there's also a physical development thing that happens, right? I've heard
Yes.
Hickson say that he thinks, or I don't know, I might be putting words in his mouth, but I feel like I remember him saying somewhere that he thought the blue belt was the hardest thing to achieve because you go from knowing absolutely nothing and your body is a normal human's body to understanding the way the game works, understanding jiu-jitsu a little bit, which is pretty hard to do. And then you turn into the jiu-jitsu animal.
So I
So your
became a
body
jiu-jitsu
becomes-
animal at purple belt.
Yes.
My body still was not that jiu-jitsu-y at blue belt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
I
So
would say
purple belt is when the back starts to V and you start to hunch a little bit and your neck starts to thicken. That usually happens at purple belt.
that process in which Hickson talks about, for me, is the blue belt through it. That's the blue belt experience. Then when you get to the end of that, you're a purple belt.
Yeah, pretty much.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if you see pictures of me with my new blue belt,
You don't look like a grappler.
Do you think is a blue belt? Does a blue belt? So they understand that there's guard, that there's passing guard, that there's pins, that there's takedowns.
You have to have an
that there's
overall
submissions.
breadth of the game.
They understand that there's all these different things.
they should
right?
be able to perform things, but again, we don't do like technique. You need to know X, Y, Z technique.
We don't have testing.
Instead, it's more like, do you have something that
Yeah,
you
but
can
it's the
do?
general awareness that those are
Uh-huh.
the things, right? Because as a pre-white belt, clear belt, you don't even know that there's a guard. Guard, you don't know what guard is.
Right.
You
don't-
might because you watched UFC.
You might. You don't know, but there's there's
Produce a podcast.
there's
Yeah.
passing guard. You know, yeah. John knows.
He knows a lot.
You don't know that there's passing guard, right? Like there's all these different things. So then what tells you that someone's ready for a purple belt?
So let me go first again, then he can add. So purple belt becomes the belt of the attack. So now I am landing those passes. I've got a game that I've put together while I was a blue belt. I put together what I like to do, different routes, and I am passing guards and holding down and going for submissions, and I am attacking. I'm getting sweeps. I'm getting all these. I'm basically in what a lot of other arts would be a black belt, but I need a lot more polishing. The other thing that happens with the cockiness of the purple belt is you're really good in some areas. There's areas where you can hold your own with black belts. You might be able to hold the black belt down or pass a black belt's guard. But then there's areas where you completely fall apart. And when you get put in those areas, a lot of times you do completely fall apart because you're cocky, you're not confident.
That's
Yes.
why I often say you get to purple belt on your strengths. You get through purple belt by addressing your weaknesses.
Oh, interesting.
So you can literally, on your attributes and your enthusiasm, ride yourself all the way to purple belt.
Okay.
But your attributes, your enthusiasm isn't going to get you through the purple onto the brown.
And so a lot of purple belts quit. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
every belts quit, but
Yeah.
tell us why people quit, Chris. Why do blue belts quit?
Blue belts quit because life happens. They get in a relationship with a person who's an avid rock climber or skier, and instead of doing jiu-jitsu all the time, they do rock climbing or skiing, or they move, or they have a slight falling out with a coach. It's not personal. I just don't like that school. It's gross, whatever. They quit because life happens. Purple belts quit because their heart gets broken. Either the coach that they idolize, they find out is really a fucking monster, which, as we know, happens in this industry all the time. And they suddenly are just deflated. This
And it's
thing,
hard,
and
right?
it's hard.
It's hard to go
Haven't
through
even
the
gotten
point
there yet.
where
Purple
you're
belt's tough.
addressing your weaknesses.
Then you have to address the areas in which you are weak. You had a climbing armbar that fucking killed everyone, but you can't block an underpass.
Yeah.
And you have no top game. So you won a bunch of things by pulling guard and arm locking, but that's the breadth of your game. So you got to address what's weak. And attribute-wise, purple belt is often where we find the strengths and weaknesses of our attribute. Are we a lightweight or a heavyweight? Do I have a heavyweights game? Do I know how to apply persistent and consistent weight on my opponent in a non-ballistic way but in a safe jiu-jitsu way, and tap you out from pressure and weight. That is what I'm looking for in a heavyweight, a blue belt. Can you safely apply your strength and your weaknesses? I don't move well, or whatever. How do we get you to adapt the things that you wish you had that the lightweight had, and the other way around? So you're finding the holes in your game, you're addressing them, and that often means putting your assets aside for sometimes months at a time. And one of the best tricks I ever learned from John Machado years ago is if there's an area in which I am weak, for me, it was I was cocky and I would get caught in a triangle all the time. Because sometimes I would escape. Like maybe 3 in 10 times I would escape out of the triangle.
That's a reward.
My Pavlovian dog is being rewarded. I'm thinking if I
30% is low, though.
But Pavlovian's dog gets hungrier and salivates more because that reward center is being rewarded. Whereas if I was rewarded 10 out of 10 times, my brain would not salivate. If I was punished 10 out of 10, my brain would not salivate. But because I'm partially rewarded, you become addicted to a pattern. And it's being able to find your bad patterns. And it's also the belt in which you have to take some adult responsibility. You have to say, it's not all the coach telling me where I'm wrong, where I'm right. No, I have to find it out now. I'm an adult.
Well, that's another good point, Chris, because what if you're training at an academy and the classes have 20 people in it, or even if you're training back here with us? It's not that the coach is always going to be seeking after you to tell you how you need to get to the next
You realize,
place.
in fact, they aren't there.
It's personal responsibility to figure
Right.
it out and ask the questions that you need to ask to get where you want to go.
Which is also where purple belts become resentful and
Exactly.
start switching
and they switch
academies.
a different coach. How many
Because
times?
the answer is I need a better coach. Mm-hmm. The answer is this school isn't showing me what I need. That's very common.
If you do privates, though, you get personal, tailored instruction.
Of
So
course.
that's always
But sometimes
a way,
they'll blame it on the private
which
coach.
is not attainable by everyone. But sometimes, I mean, I think sometimes having a one-on-one
Sure,
with
it's
a black belt
always is
on a
helpful.
regular basis
It's always
is
helpful.
going to help you to pinpoint those
Absolutely,
holes.
always helpful. But the purple belt
Just saying.
is the belt, from my opinion, which gets you to the brown belt, which is maturity, is being
confidence.
able to self-assess and not assume that it's because of this coach, that coach, not having a coach, too much. It's what do I need to do to unfuck my game?
And you have the ability at brown belt then, and this was my experience 100%, to stay calm even when you're in positions that you're not necessarily comfortable in.
That's correct.
When you don't know what to do, you just relax and say, I'm going to figure this out. Whereas the purple belt, a lot of times they get where they don't like, and they're like, oh my God, it's like a panic, right?
They resort back to white belt habit.
Yes.
So, in the water analogy I use, the clear belt doesn't know how to swim at all. I throw them at the 8-foot end of the pool, they panic, their extremities move, and they drown. The blue belt, I can throw in a pool. They might not swim well, but they can tread water. They realize it's in the hips. They're moving their hips and body, not just arms and legs. And they become blue belts then. You're basically somewhat drown-proof in calm water. The purple belt, you're learning all the strokes. You're learning how to relax and hold your breath under water. You can start rolling on big waves. As a matter of fact, you do fine on huge waves when you make it up. But when you pearl and will go under, now you panic. Mm-hmm. The brown belt doesn't panic. With the brown belt has a more accurate thing. I don't want to drop in on that one or not, right? That's then that gets you to the black belt. Because then, unless you fuck up entirely, you cannot
Or
not
quit,
become a black belt.
because brown
right?
belts quit too.
They do occasionally.
One of the
Usually injury or
Or they're mad because nobody
piss
gave
off.
them a black
that
belt.
happens. Yep.
Or they're brown belts for a real long time and they don't have a coach.
Yeah.
We've met a lot of people like that.
But the ideals, I don't mean what actually happens. There's
I'm just
exceptions
giving examples.
to all of them, yes. And examples of where my model was wrong all over the place. But I mean the
It's
ideal
not wrong.
model.
This is what we
Inaccurate.
kind of believe.
True.
One of the things that I say is that purple belt, you lose. You know when you're rolling with somebody and you kind of like, you're kind of like trying to pass their guard or whatever you're trying to do, right? And you get that one notch ahead of them during the roll, and they go, oh, and they kind of like give it up.
That's
Yeah.
very
I feel like
purple
that's
belt-ish.
very like, and that goes away at purple belt, is what I
Yes.
think. Because by the
that
time
needs to go away before you're a brown.
Before
you
brown
once
belt.
you get your
Yeah,
brown
for
belt,
sure.
you no longer do that ever.
So if you're doing that and you're a brown belt, then you need to get through that before you're going to
You
get your
never
black
go,
belt.
and just like let the person do whatever they're going to do. There's always like, okay, I see they
You're in
got
the
one
fight.
notch ahead, but we're still fighting, and I'm going to keep, and I know how to conserve my energy and find the little position for this new position that I'm now in. And
Which also
To us, that's a sign of a brown belt.
and
That's
it's
what it seems like
also
to me, yeah.
the reason why the brown belt is the time to polish and fix what you might have missed.
yeah,
It's going
Absolutely.
back through the whole thing again, accepting the confidence. Oh yeah, I do know that. Oh yeah, I do. Ooh, I know that, but I missed this one little spark. Right? It's overriding the Dunning-Kruger crest.
yeah. And it's like, because like in order to, so there is an acceptance principle, right? Where you like accept the energy that's coming at you, someone passing your guard, whatever. You've decided they've passed. And you can't just relax. Like you have to take that energy and keep it moving
Yes.
in order to move on. And I feel like that's one of the major things that I see at purple belt.
Which is also in the whole Dunning-Kruger model. When you're at the mountain up here, you are the least willing to admit that you might be wrong.
That's what I was
That's
gonna
the
say.
big
Yeah.
problem.
There's an ego component too.
Yes.
The purple belt's like an ego wash. It's like you get a big dose of humility to start,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get a little bit of confidence and enthusiasm, which I remember very clearly. White belt,
Oh yeah,
blue belt for me.
I was a cocky purple belt.
So enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic. Yep.
And then
And eager.
and then you get cocky at the purple belt, and then you gotta
Mm-hmm.
get humbled again. Yeah, it's a humility, doses of humility at these different stages.
Yes.
It seems like that's a component as well.
And I'm convinced, and I believe I'm not going to name the various philosophers and spiritual movements out there, but humility is the absolute key to all learning. All learning, and there's a willingness that one must have that if you don't have, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I deal with that with my son all the time. It's like the ability to admit that you are wrong
Yeah.
is one of the hardest things, but the most necessary thing to learn this. And the good thing about this art is you are physically confronted with being wrong, tap, all the time. Whereas other arts, your brain can rationalize, well, if it was real, I wouldn't have done that. I would have moved that way.
I
would
think
have
people
poked
do
you
that
in the
in
eyes.
this too, though. They
But-
go, "Oh,
but-
I was sick. Oh, I wasn't giving my all. Oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't trying. That person was going A game. I was going B game."
They do, but nothing like in the
Fantasy
arts,
Yeah.
which is what they're all about. Is what I could have, should have done, but because I'm so noble and good, I didn't spin kick you in the face.
Think about this idea of like the raft in the ocean of chaos, right? So as soon as you're swimming in the ocean of chaos, you find
You
a
think
raft,
you're drowning,
you
get a
grab
hold of a raft.
onto it. But the reality is, like, ideally you get to the best raft or whatever the most stable, consistent thing, which would be the truth, right?
Yes.
You need to let go of that raft a little bit in order to find that other thing. Where if you cling to the raft all the way till the raft sinks,
That's
and now you go
right.
down with the raft, that's no good, right?
Good analogy.
So
yes.
like it's like you
and
have
that
to have
truth, that raft is not as stable as you think. It's bobbing up and down and moving too.
this right.
And sometimes you have to let go of a truth because if you cling on it, it's going to lead you to a worse
Right.
outcome.
Right. So I feel like we just kind of went through purple belt in this discussion.
We did brown belt. And, yeah,
We
we,
went
did
through
brown
purple.
belt.
And now we're to brown.
No, we did brown.
The one thing I
did?
will say,
Yeah, we talked about how brown is the confidence. Once you're no longer freaking out, that's what that whole part was about.
So brown belt's a black belt. As soon as you
Brown
get your
belt
brown
is a
belt, you're a
holding
black
pattern for black
Yes,
belt,
it's a holding
according to what we believe. That if you just don't quit. Now, again, some people are
you
held
still have to
at,
work.
Some
Yeah.
people are held at brown belt longer though because maybe they didn't fully get the experience of the purple belt.
Yep.
So you got to catch up. Like for us, if you've been a brown belt for a long time, there's something that we still maybe it's something that should have been addressed a little sooner.
So one of my insecurities in all this stuff is the competition component. I was like a pretty serious competitor all through my blue belt, and then I never competed as a purple belt, and never competed as a brown belt, and I have yet to compete as a black belt. But one of the things I'm hearing through this is that there is like a philosophical, conceptual component to how these rankings go that really doesn't require someone to compete if you think about it, because you can gain all this development and understanding on the training mats.
Well, yeah.
The competition will definitely help that.
What is competition? Because there's formal competition, and then there's the competition we have at the end of every class when it's like, okay, guys, let's roll. That's competition. But it's different than formalized, structured. And the biggest thing is in our brains, when we do a formal comp, we have an audience.
Yeah.
And when we're rolling around on the open mat, we think we're audience free.
And I would
That's the
argue
biggest difference.
that also when you're rolling around on the mat with your training partners, you know their game.
Yes.
And when you go out there and you face somebody in your weight class that you've never
You
trained
don't
with
have
before,
any
you have
control.
no idea what they're going to do. So it's way different. And when we were younger and we were still competing, we pretty much required that all of our students compete too.
Yes,
At
That
every
was
belt.
a
every
thing.
belt.
At every
And we
belt.
lost some students over that
Yes.
that didn't want to compete or didn't like how they performed in their competition.
Yeah.
But that was the phase in our jiu-jitsu where we were more focused on the sport.
Yeah.
And part of that was, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that you believed that it was making us better
That's
by
correct.
competing. How was
It
it
is.
making us better?
Well, here's the thing. Now we have to talk about what are the goals of this. The goal isn't competition. Competition is a training route, a training tool to get you to the goal. What is the goal? To get really good at the art of jiu-jitsu, to be able to apply it in a live, adaptable environment. And competition is a good way to get over certain ego trips, to get over fear, control issues, and all these things that you can get over without it, but it's going to be harder.
And it can be a lot of fun.
And
about
it can
to
be
say
a lot
that.
of fun.
You gotta
It
add
can
that
be
too.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then, so where we've transitioned to in our group as well is almost everybody is over 40. I mean, you're like 39, right? How old are you?
I'm going to be 39 next month.
Okay, you're almost 39.
God,
So
that's so
everybody's
young.
like over, it is young, but like you have a family, you're working on stuff, you're taking
Yeah.
care of kids. Like it's different when you add in all these variables. And I know there's plenty of people with kids out there that prioritize competition, but it's like for me, even I was competing with 2 little kids, but it was really once I got significant injuries that are life threatening that I decided that I wasn't going to do that anymore.
Yep.
He was over 50, has to teach. Like this is our job. So decided he wasn't going to do that anymore. We already talked about this, knocking people's teeth out, people getting carried away on stretchers. And we just stopped making that part of our whole thing. So
Yeah. I mean, the way we're describing the belt rankings, though, it doesn't really seem like a requirement. But like you said, it would help you along the way and would help you develop these concepts and characteristics.
And if you do, you will certainly get from clear to a black belt faster.
I
sure.
believe
Because
that,
it
yes.
forces good jiu-jitsu. Because you can't make up an excuse if the referee keeps raising the other guy's hand.
And I think that I went through the belts quickly, and I also competed a lot as a blue and purple belt. Like there was a lot of competition going on.
Good for you to
Less
compete.
as a brown belt and black belt, but during those formative years, that was how I was figuring out what worked. Because like I've shared, if everybody's weight class is heavier than me, how do I know if this is going to work against somebody my own size? Well, by competing.
But also, like, outside of the technical components, as far as it driving you technically, I think it like drives you spiritually as well,
Absolutely.
and helps you deal with these ego issues.
Yep.
Helps you look at yourself. Helps you have confidence. It's all these things. I mean, I've left a tournament, you know, double elimination tournament, lost 2 matches, but then walked away going like,
You learned a lot.
but even with confidence.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I lost to these 2 guys, but
that ain't never going to happen to me again.
well,
Kind
or
of
just
feeling you
like,
get.
I mean, if you're comparing yourself to the average person, the average person wasn't out there competing that day.
True.
The average person didn't go give that guy a run for his money, you know? So it's
The
like
man in the arena.
even if
Theodore Roosevelt, put the quote up.
yeah, even if you lose in competition, I feel like it's a good confidence builder if you're thinking about it correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely 100% think that competition is such an integral part of what we do. And again, I don't necessarily mean organized by some
just rolling.
bureaucracy. You have to roll.
You have to roll.
And
We
I
won't
know-
give anybody a belt if they don't roll, by
And-
the way.
and-
BJW.
Because you're
But-
not doing it.
You're not
Now you're not
doing
doing
it.
it.
But I
That's
know,
clear.
I know people in this industry
Who give belts
don't
without
really
rolling.
roll,
Yes.
and they give belts to people that don't roll or don't roll very much.
That seems insane.
It seems insane.
It
It's
seems
fine
like
if you do that.
It's fine.
You do you.
Yeah. You do you.
yeah, it
But
just-
we don't do that.
it seems pretty meta.
Maybe we will when we
meta,
stop
right?
rolling.
It
We
seems
might,
it
Tobin.
seems very meta. I don't think you will. I think
No,
it
I
seems
don't.
very meta,
We'll
right?
just give
Because now
up.
you're like not even doing the thing that
Right.
you're awarding.
But
right?
if, like, let's just say, you know, one or both of us stops rolling, but we still have students, how do we still lead by example?
That's the hard part.
I think you have students that are
Are
on the
carrying
mat,
it on?
carrying
That's the
on
route.
what
And
you're
we're just
doing,
trying
and you're
to be
standing there directing them. You're
Yoda?
standing with a cane,
Yoda?
helping your
Well,
students
no,
do your
Yoda
thing,
could still
right?
flip and shit.
Which then again, also, now here's where lineage is a thing. Because if your lineage are guys that put it on the line, competed, like back in the early days, like I remember Brazilians arguing about what the rules should be before they even had the established rules. And we were coming out of the garage challenges, early MMA, to where they go, okay, guys, next week we're have a competition. Some guys from João Moreira, other schools will be there. What's the rules? Well, we don't know. When we get there, we figure it out. And like, to me, that seemed cooler.
Yeah,
Then, because what it left you with was the unknown.
right.
And the less you know, the better spiritual growth you get, because it requires a more, as the samurai says, you step into the void.
Yeah.
You accept your fate.
Maybe we should put on tournaments with you'll find out the rules. when
That's
you
what
get
I
there.
wanted, but to have
Don't
in
steal
here.
our ideas.
Multiple cameras, call it garage matches or
We talked about
garage
this last time, I
fights,
think.
and we have them in here, invite only, your name's on a list. Anytime within the next 72 hours, you have an invite to the garage.
It's like Hunger Games.
Under not knowing what the rules will be.
Yeah.
And I think it would be cool as hell. I'll
it'd be really
referee, of course. I'll have a chest cam. We'll have a 360 cam. We'll have multiple spots.
We might do it. John's
And-
into it.
We'll have
John's into it.
awesome matches.
John wants to.
Yep, Halleck and I, we used to
Tobin's not sure.
discuss
John's into
this
it.
back
I'm
in
into
the-
it.
Oh, you're
I'll
into
fight.
it?
No,
You're
I'll
in?
definitely fight for sure.
Oh, you'll fight?
Yeah, of course.
Fight.
No, you have to edit.
I would fight.
You have to post.
Your tech production.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, that's my idea. I have all kinds of cool fucking ideas.
Well, we're trending towards another
I'm the
episode when we
ideas
talk
guy,
about
as
competition.
Larry
Oh yeah, that would be
David
cool.
says.
But so we're at black belt now. So we got
Yes.
through to black belt.
We're
So
there.
black belt, it sounds like
Let's start all over again.
You're humble
But
because
you-
you
you-
have a target on your back.
you understand jiu-jitsu, you've worked on your ego,
You got a game.
you've developed your body, you have a game that's yours, that's been refined.
You roll.
You roll. You've got all these different characteristics. How do you define a black belt?
So I call it fundamental mastery of the fundamentals, of which part of those is the problem-solving nature of jiu-jitsu. You should be able to resolve problems, working it out with other grapplers by saying, hey, can you grab over here and hold on this and move left, not right, and I'm going to see what happens. This is where you get to reintroduce and start running your own experiments. When we approach it as a science, right? We have a science and art and a sport in as well. And the science and philosophy part are what create the art.
How do you define a black belt when you're ready to give a black belt to somebody?
Again, if they went through everything we talked about, then it really is. They've been a brown belt and they went through the whole process, and there they are. They're
Nice.
ready. Like, it's no, to me, like what Chris taught me is that it shouldn't be any different from a brown belt. But if somebody came to me as a brown belt, which people have, then I'm making sure that we hit all those markers that I had for the lower belts, right?
It's an event that marks the ending of a process.
Graduation.
I see. So when you intake a student that's ranked from somebody else,
It happens all the time.
how does that work for you? Do you have you ever demoted somebody
No.
upon intake?
No, we just might hold them at wherever they're
Yeah.
at until they reach our requirements. But if they come to us as a brown belt and they've been a brown belt for 10 years and they're sick, they get their black belt that day.
Yeah.
There's no or
Right, yeah.
maybe not that day.
Okay, yeah.
Let's make sure that this is a good fit,
They're
that
not
this
a
is a
pedophile,
relationship.
yeah.
Well, that this is a relationship that we want to continue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if we just hand them a black belt and then they go off and they don't care about us anymore, then that's kind of like, maybe you should just get your black belt with somebody that you want to have a relationship with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's really what this is all about.
Yeah.
We have a relationship.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know, for other people, maybe it's more transactional, like about money, but to me, it's about a coaching experience.
Yeah.
Do you want to remain a student of ours? Then you should receive your black belt from us.
And I've had both the guy who's come to me as, say, a purple or a brown, who has clearly been wrongly held back. And I've had ones that have clearly been wrongly promoted to try to get them to stay at the school or whatever it is. Yep.
I've definitely rolled with a variety of
Yes.
different people at different ranks and different had different
But
experiences.
most of the time, even at my advanced age, I'm almost fucking 60, I can tell within 5 minutes of rolling with whoever what rank they at least should be. But now there are exceptions. The guy who's the former college wrestler, who's a black belt, is going to basically start rolling as a purple belt right off the bat, even if they've never done any jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be there. And I have no problem giving those kind of people honorary rank after a very little amount of proper jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Unless they want to compete in IBJJF, then you better make sure that
Then
you've
you-
been a blue belt for 2 years.
You got to check all the
and
boxes.
18 months
Yeah.
at purple belt.
You gotta
or
check all the
you
boxes.
are not going to be allowed
Yeah.
to compete.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That's
Yeah.
how they do it now, which they never did in the past.
Yeah,
but
they
it's
didn't
what
in
it
the
is
past.
now. So if you want to do that, then you can
And
do
in
that.
my perfect school, in near the Elvish Kingdoms, I have a certain way in which I would evaluate that human or dwarf that came from that other school presenting such rank and says, "May I join your tribe?"
Yeah.
Right? And I always try to put things in a narrative story thing because that enables me to step out of it
Yeah.
and not become personally involved.
It's interesting in all this. I feel like the way that you guys rank it and do it, there isn't like so much of a check the boxes type of assessment, which I actually feel like is kind of cool at other schools that I've been to where they have like an actual
The test.
things that
Yep.
you need to know, which I think is great. But I also see that it's not totally necessary. And it certainly is impressive. Like there's one guy on the internet that does these black belt tests and they film them and publish them. And they're Roy Dean.
Yes, I know.
And he puts they have these like amazing black belt tests where
I've seen them.
and I mean, it's amazing. They look awesome. You know what I mean? You watch it and you're like, wow, this is amazing. This guy's doing all this stuff, right?
It looks awesome in the John Wick sense of
Correct.
of
But like,
martial arts, yeah.
there's invisible jiu-jitsu, right? And I
Yes,
feel
that's
like
right.
the most boring looking thing is actually sometimes a better indicator of the person's
That
rank.
is absolutely 100% correct. I often say that Like when Hickson first began to make his instructional things, I was talking with him on the phone. He was excited, telling me about we were going to have. My first thought was, oh no, Hickson, don't do it. Because people aren't going to see the magic. Because you have to feel it. Because it's an invisible thing. And when you start doing something like a test, which is really a show for the evaluators, a show for the internet audience, a show for your YouTube fan base, you're missing or ignoring a part that might be there, but it's so not emphasized.
Correct.
Whereas
yeah.
me personally as a coach, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
And so much is lost by visual learning.
Yeah.
Because so much you need that tactile learning.
Yeah.
And so as a coach, I am far less interested in your performance of your knowledge than I am in the feel of your knowledge. Which, as Hickson told me 10 years ago, Chris, it's not the moves, it's not the technique, it's the essence, it's the connection. It's how you feel this. I need to feel that you get this. So, but if that's the way they want to do their thing, and I understand how that would bring you more business, go do it.
Well, and it would allow you to handle more students, right?
And allows you to handle more
Whereas,
students.
like, the way that you rank, I mean, you gotta
It's hard.
know the people,
at my age
and
now,
you gotta be able to roll with them, and you gotta be able to
which has
feel
gotten
it and-
harder.
We also
Yeah.
ask opinions, though. We have
Yes.
plenty of black belts.
Well, and that's
who
what it
can
turns
give their
into,
opinions, and we can watch.
I think that's where it kind of ends up being is you have close confidants that are
Yep.
under you essentially that end up doing that for you. And I mean,
Well, like I
kinda started to do that, I've
just
seen.
ranked a guy, Chris Wilburn, who
What's up, Chris?
had been grappling for, I want to say 15 years at least.
He was a brown belt for a long time.
For a
is what he
long
told me.
fucking time. Who had been politically held back for whatever reasons, what it was. And within 5 minutes of rolling with him, I'm like, yeah, he's a black belt. I can tell.
well, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I could just tell.
Yeah.
But then I've rolled with other guys who have come to me, sometimes as black belts, who to me feel like they have gaping holes in their game.
Yeah.
So really, it's not about the belt. It's what you want to chase is the art.
Yeah.
What the belt symbolizes is the acquiring knowledge, right? The belt
It should
symbolizes.
symbolize passing through various milestones in the acquisition of the knowledge of getting to a point where you are humble enough to relearn jiu-jitsu, which is the black belt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because then your game completely changes with all these injuries
That's
and
right.
different things that come up. Or like me, my hip doesn't work, so my game's different because I've got to figure out how to move around this hip.
Because it's the art of adaptation. And when you realize it's not a collection of moves, it's an ability to problem solve and adapt. And it just so happens that having a guard and passing a guard are the two most critical things that you must adapt to
'Cause that's
to
the
a
game.
combat environment
That's the game.
without any rules. Yep. And then when we add rules to emphasize and value the guard and the passing guard, we have the sport of the jiu-jitsu. When we add rules that emphasize and value the upright claw throw, we have the sport of judo. When we remove that gi and it's the waist up clinch, we have the sport of Greco.
But I gotta say, I think that correct, like, to me it sounds correct that like you're chasing the art, not the belt. But I do think the belt becomes like very important for somebody who's like older and doesn't have the athletic attributes that wants to engage in the sport and can rely on an instructor or somebody with a lot more experience to rank them as an indicator of where they are in this process as far as developing these characteristics and
As a
gaining
Taoist-
the essence of the sport while they're training with people that are way more athletic.
Yes.
Right? Because you might always feel like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not developing because I'm just getting beat up by all these younger guys. This could be a case. But if you have someone monitoring what's going on with you that has more experience, that's giving you rank, that can show you where you are in the process and help you reflect, I think.
And
So
your
that
personal potential.
can be a place where it really helps
Yes.
push, allow people to engage and benefit from the art of jiu-jitsu and study the art of jiu-jitsu
Yes.
and participate.
And if I were a Taoist monk, I would say the most important part of that is to get that belt so you can let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that the other day. I was thinking about how my earlier jiu-jitsu experience, my ego had me so tied to jiu-jitsu where it was like my identity.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Yeah.
since getting my black belt, I don't have that as much
I
anymore.
had that until my hip went out.
Yeah. Where I don't feel like it's a requirement for my identity
Yeah.
as much, which is interesting.
That's like
Who am I if I don't train?
in the last 3
Yeah,
years,
right.
one of my lines I often use in this age of the rising threats of AI, political extremism, nuclear war, climate change. This is so fucking unimportant.
It is.
It is such just like, who fucking cares whether
I care.
got the arm lock or not?
Yeah, but I
But,
mean,
I don't obsess on those things anymore.
but at the same time, I say, and here's, and I mentioned this in the past, the value that the actor brings in this is you got to lean into the role. You can't ever forget that I'm playing a role, but at the same time, when I'm present, I'm going to be present. I'm going to give the best jiu-jitsu I have for my opponent in spite of looming nuclear war.
My place that I'm in is gratitude for the ability to participate, even though I have what I feel are significant limitations physically. That's just what I feel, is I just have gratitude that I can do it
nice.
at all.
Nice. So once you get your black belt, you get graded. You get stripes on your black belt, and what do these mean?
Nothing.
Well, all those...
I heard it means you're old.
Yeah. It means time is passing.
I mean, on the black belt, technically the stripe means you have been consistent in the art, whether through competing, teaching, whatever, and a certain amount of time has passed, and you get a stripe. I always say in order to not get stripes, you have to do something stupid.
Or
You have to-
quit.
or quit.
You could quit.
Yep.
Stop rolling.
It's like, hey,
Well, even if
Yeah.
you stop rolling, what if you're just still teaching? I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going to get that 72-year-old red belt,
you are
Turn into a
participating in the art of jiu-jitsu.
Right.
It does require a participation.
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean like we say you got to roll, but
Yeah.
like what if you've been doing this for 50 years and you just can't roll anymore?
You're on a walker.
You're on a walker, but you still show up and you kind
Yep.
of go, move your arm a little here,
Yeah.
Sonny. Can you still get your red belt?
I mean, I would think so. I don't think anyone
I think that's
cares
how it
about
would
that.
work.
Sonny,
right?
move your arm a little bit to the left.
I think that's how it would work.
Yeah, but who knows? Who knows? With AI introducing the medical field, stem cell, and all that, I might be competing in 5 years in the adult division again.
Me too.
But
you
never
might have
knows.
you might have like a robot that like uses your brain.
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Sick.
That would-
Brains worth
My-
saving.
yeah.
All right. Well, I guess then you just get striped up all the way to red belt. Red belt means you're super duper old and you've stayed engaged for so
Yes.
long that the
Yep.
sands of time.
And
have
for
gone
But
me-
over.
you have to start pretty young, though, too.
Yeah.
If you're going to stay on the mat all those years to get to the red belt, which is
Yes.
what you were saying, it's only like founders. But I think
It
maybe
used to
we'll
only be
see
them. Yeah.
more red belts because people are starting younger
Way younger.
and staying with it for the long haul.
And so we got the time is to get your first stripe on your black belt. It's
3 years.
Three
Three?
for the first three.
Three, then 4, 5,
Four.
and
Hold
7
on,
or
hold
something.
on. No, come on, we got it right here on the chart. Okay, so
This
yeah,
is
the
your
first three are three.
three,
And then it goes to five,
Five,
five.
five, five. And then what happens after the next
Then
one?
you
So
gotta
Chris,
go 7, 7.
so then 7 years on the Corral belt.
You have to be a 6-degree black belt for 7 years to get your
Corral.
red and black 7th degree.
Cor-
Then you have to be a 7th degree for 7 years to get your red and white 8th degree. And then you have to be an 8th degree for 10 years to get your red belt. ninth degree.
So this is minimum time with an instructor that's monitoring what you're doing and says you've been engaged for this minimum amount of time. Here's your next thing. And your next thing is a corral belt.
Yep. And you see, I think as a layperson philosopher, I think this is like a perfect example of the value and the analysis of the government, a body, right? So IBJJF, let's call them the big government. And we could be resentful that we have to go through these things. And how come they get to decide when, where, and how we have rank, right? That's like the debate man has been having within tribes and between tribes for ages. And the thing is we pretend that this is real, just like we pretend money is real. And money is real because we all agree that this piece of paper says this.
Yeah.
And as soon as we all stop agreeing with that, suddenly all it is paper with writing on it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I just find fascinating about how our human brains create collective reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a collective reality we have in our art that we have these steps.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's a collective reality we have on our planet that this paper that we have is worth what the writing says it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only worth that because we have an agreement,
Mm-hmm.
a collective agreement.
A narrative that we all believe
A
in,
narrative
right?
that we all
It's like when
believe in.
Elon Musk says Dogecoin to the moon, and then the value of some random thing
Right.
just like goes up.
And
crazy,
that
right?
is the power of the individual
Yeah.
influencing the culture. And I personally find it fascinating
It is
as an
interesting,
amateur
yeah.
anthropologist how sheepish we humans are
Yeah.
to follow, whether it's Elon Musk, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump.
But think of
We all
it like
follow it.
the raft in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do? You're floating around in
Right.
a pool full of chaos.
Because we cannot survive on our own. Even if you went back 200,000 years, the myth of the lone wolf is just that, a myth.
Yeah.
Even amongst wolves, lone wolves don't live very long. We need a pack.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like Sebastian Junger's book, A Tribe, which came out, I want to say, 2008 or 9, which is a brilliant book where he's in Iraq with young grunt units and analyzing the value of tribe.
Yeah.
How even people that you hate in your tribe, we intuitively know are necessary for our survival because we got to eat and sleep. And if I sleep alone, I'm going to get fucking eaten. Mm-hmm. I need somebody to watch my back while I sleep. And I'll watch yours while you do too. Mm-hmm. And of course, the whole prepper world, survivalist world, everyone worried about civil war and all those primal fears are being tapped into all the time now on our planet. Mm-hmm. Which is why when there's scary times, there's a couple industries that actually flourish. Mm-hmm. Martial arts, camping gear, guns, because people want to feel secure. We have on our Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the very bottom, we have that need for security. Mm. And what we teach tickles that need.
Well, that's why the belt system is important. It gives you the security that you are making progress.
It gives you a
being
symbol
domed by a higher power.
to let you know
yeah.
I am not
floating in the world in a pool full of chaos, not going anywhere. Yeah, that makes sense. So one other thing I wanted to talk about before we hit some cues from the internet and do our special gym shout-out segment.
Oh, yeah.
So one thing that I see a lot with rank in jiu-jitsu is it feels to a lot of students like something that you shouldn't talk about with your instructor. Like it's something that they give you that you take no part in and you shouldn't have anything to do with.
The old school way is you never ask. Never ask for rank.
I'm not saying ask for rank, but like when I came to you guys, for instance, I think there was a moment in time where it was unclear who was going to rank me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important.
Last night I had a guy ask me that, white belt. I realized about halfway in, he's explaining to me how he's trained 2 years. He was training with this. And I'm here now at this place. He's letting me know that I want to be ranked under you
you.
without actually asking me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the thing, is that sometimes like people get into these predicaments in jiu-jitsu, I think, where it's just not clear what they're doing.
What
Maybe
I call
they
the
train
politics of jiu-jitsu.
at a
Yep.
few different places, and one person might rank them, one person might not.
That's
and I
right.
think there's a situation where someone gets caught because they're like a purple belt, they would like to progress, they'd like to see how they're progressing, but this guy's like, oh no, the other guy's ranking him, and this
Right.
guy's like, no, the other guy's ranking him.
And that's like why I also, I got to interject, I certainly understand the value of old school, rejection of creonches and the guys that go jump around school to school, rank hunting and all that. It's stick with the horse you rode in on. Don't be running around changing schools all the time. And I also understand that sometimes life happens, people move and all this stuff,
Yeah.
falling out. But I get the value of letting one instructor evaluate you, if you can, through your process.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard too sometimes if that, let's say I just have this one instructor, he's like 250 pounds and I'm a 130-pound female and he's a dude and whatever, like, might I need some influence from some other people and
Yeah.
maybe seek out other coaching?
Yep.
So like I always trained with Cindy and Chris, and it just so happens that Chris gave me my blue and purple belt without her, and then they gave me my brown belt together. And by the time I got my black belt, I wasn't really going to train with Cindy anymore because I was trying to just stay close to home for the kids. So it just happened that I was ranked as my black belt only under Chris.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but the communication part, and I don't know
Communication
that Chris and Cindy ever really communicated about my belts.
A little bit, yeah.
But, I mean, on the brown belt you did
Yeah.
because you both did it. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
But I think it's up to the student. So the students kind of have this notion that, maybe you're in this situation where you're caught between two places, and you feel like it's up to the higher powers just to work that out. The fact of the matter is, it's not all about you. They're not thinking about you like that, probably. And you need to take it in your own hands as far as like communicate and make it clear what you want to see happen, so that either your two instructors know to communicate with each other and make it happen, or they just make it clear to the one person that you want to train under. I just kind of think like, don't create a situation where someone can go, oh, that instructor belt, the person's belt shopping and the instructor gave them their belt to join there. It's like, no, they sought out, you are the one seeking out the instructor, right? Like,
yeah.
I want to learn from this person. So
Well,
like, that's one
that
thing,
would be nice in an ideal world, and I've actually been in that situation fairly recently, and I don't like the way that I handled it, because I wasn't the one who gave the belt, right? The other instructor gave the belt without consulting me, and really it was just a miscommunication.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have gone and talked to that instructor or attended a class there if I really cared and wanted to give these people their belts, or at least be there when they received their belts. You know? But yeah, I guess it's just not a perfect world. And as an instructor who doesn't have an academy and just teaches private lessons, I really can't expect that people are just going to be loyal to me, I don't think.
Well, and another consideration too, I think a good commerce component is where when the person formally says, like, I want to be ranked under you, so I'm going to pay you to be a part of your thing.
That's the other.
And now
aspect
you guys
of it,
have like shooken hands, and now it's very clear what we're doing here.
we have a deal.
And I think that,
and
it's not paying for the belt.
Sure.
I mean, it's paying to be ranked
It's paying
under this
to
person,
learn.
but you're not paying for a guaranteed belt.
But
And be
a
coached.
lot of martial arts, particularly the traditional Asian arts, are definitely financially structured in that way. There are schools you can go and sign up, and
you buy your black belt.
by giving that check, you are promised at the end of X amount of time, if you show up, you're going to get your belt.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
Let's go to Q&A.
All right. Well, first we got our gym shout out of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Melissa, did you want to shout out
Yeah, I just got to pull it up.
a school here?
All right, guys, we want to give a shout out to Jerry Wetzel and Centerline Gym, which is currently in Los Alamitos, California. Discover Centerline Gym, a premier training facility offering a range of martial arts classes, not only jiu-jitsu, but MMA, kickboxing, boxing, and Muay Thai, catering to all ages. The gym also features specialized kids classes, founded by Jerry Wetzel, who is the creator of the Red Zone Threat Management System, which is also really awesome weapons defense stuff. With over 25 years of experience, Wessel emphasizes the importance of understanding biological, psychological, emotional, and behavioral factors in combat.
And I will say that, but Jerry's one of those guys for the last 15 years gone around and taught marshals, law enforcement, foreign, LE in Germany and Australia. He does a really good system for cops to deal with threat management, whether it's the beat cop walking up on a car or a small unit entering a hostile building. It's really good.
And he also
really good
has
instruction.
Great women's self-defense,
yes,
women's programs, and bully proofing for
Yep.
kids. So he's really Think Street, Train Sport, Practice Art guy. They do in-house tournaments over there in their kids program.
Yep.
They have a lot going on. So if you have kids and you're in the Los Alamitos area, or if you yourself just want to train, it's a really great place to check out.
Nice. Epic. All right, let's hit some cues. All right, so cues. All right, so at Dr. Bill Roach.
What's up,
says,
Dr. Bill?
These podcasts are great. I definitely want to hear more about your requirements for each belt. There you go.
There you go.
Fresh
There we
for wine.
go, Dr. Bill. Thanks for listening.
Also, when should Professor Stripes be awarded? There you go. We just nailed it. So it sounds like Professor
Basically
Stripes.
follow the IBJJF.
Oh, Professor Stripes
the
are
guidelines.
the two bars.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I
Professor
misinterpreted.
Stripes are these.
The
So
rocker bars.
Does IBJJF say that you have to be a black belt for 1 year to get these professor bars? Because I think that if you teach, you should get them.
I'm not sure
That's
yet.
my opinion.
So back in the olden days, it was not uncommon that there were brown belts that had red swaths.
I had one.
With the white instructor bars, because that brown belt
It's right
had
there.
been teaching since they were a blue belt.
They do that at GU.
And the red swath means you're an instructor.
Yeah.
This is my brown
Yep.
belt.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, I'm not sure what the current IBJJF guidelines or the GU guidelines or Hickson's or the Machados or any of them. But in my opinion, if you are teaching and have been since as a brown belt, when you get your black belt, you're now a black belt instructor.
And if you don't teach as a black belt, you shouldn't have them.
I guess
That's
not.
what I think.
Yep,
and
probably
some
not.
black belts do not teach. I don't think it should be a requirement to have to teach if that is some kind of thing that
Yep.
person just doesn't
I'm
do.
pretty sure that, like some of the current world champs, I think Isaac has a
White,
white swath. Yeah,
whatever
just
that means.
because even though he's teaching all the time, so I don't know.
Maybe
guy,
it's just like, forget all this shit.
Yeah, maybe it is. Who
If the
cares?
guy or gal finesses their way to kicking your ass on the mats and then is nice enough to share some knowledge with you, then they're your professor. That's
Yes.
the deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. All right. At capital B, capital G dash SJ7ZH.
What up?
What up? What was your favorite belt? I'm a brown belt and almost wish I could stay a purple belt and just cruise forever.
I think it's one of those things that always seems like the belt that you just wore was better. But I personally think probably the coolest belt is the brown belt, at least in the olden days, because you get all the respect that the black belt gets, none of the pressure.
Nice.
But purple belt is definitely probably the funnest belt,
Yeah.
the one where there's the most growth, the most reward, the deepest valleys. Therefore, that period of one's life is often the most impactful life.
Okay, now I was a purple belt and a brown belt between 27 and 30, and those are like my favorite ages. So it's really hard to compare like anything that happened.
Yeah.
Like the body and everything. It was just, everything was so dialed
It's all
in
gelling.
at that time that, you know, like late purple belt to early brown belt would probably be one of my favorite times of my life, where I could just be completely self-absorbed. We didn't have kids yet. Like it was just like a, not that having kids is not a favorite time of my life, because of course it is, but that was like a time when it was all about me. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's, I think it all has favorites and not, like favorite is a hard word.
Yeah.
That was a really good time.
There's a good and bad.
But
for
I
all.
also
all good.
appreciate being the maturity that has come with being a third degree black belt.
Yeah.
So maybe my favorite time is actually right now.
Here
The third degree black belt, even though with the bum hip, that I could just have the maturity to not be like mad at the world all the time. Because when I was a brown belt and a purple belt, I was still mad at the world. If I hurt my knee, it was like the end of the world.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, if, whatever, I couldn't do the competition. Oh, obsess in the head. Oh.
Angsty.
So it was fun on the mat, but off the mat, maybe it wasn't so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
A lot of stress.
I hear a lot
Stressful.
of people say purple belt's their favorite belt. And
It's
I've
a pretty
said that
good
a
belt.
bunch.
I don't know. I don't like the cockiness that I personally had. And the insecurity. There was a lot of insecurity. And I would have panic attacks on my way to the gym. That was all my purple belt phase. Because it's that false confidence that shows up as cockiness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want
Yeah,
to
it's
go
kind
back to
of
that
doesn't
for
taste good.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
other
have no
people
interest in
don't
going
have
back
it
to
as
the
bad
purple
as I have
belt.
it.
I
I'm
didn't
like a
have
pretty
that bad.
classic belt follower.
I enjoyed purple belt because the learning component was pretty cool at that time for me, and then I would say like the first couple months of black belt was the worst. I disliked that the most out of all the belts.
Yeah, that
Like,
was
the
a hard
first
time.
6 months of my black belt was my least favorite belt.
It felt like too heavy.
Yeah, and but
I-
then after that crested, I would say it's my favorite. So
You see, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely for me, my purple belt phase was the phase where I was the most immersed in this.
yeah,
Where like I would dream about it at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would have jiu-jitsu dreams, or I'm rolling in my dreams.
It's like an
I wake up like,
obsession.
oh, I missed that fucking arm lock.
Yeah.
I was
The
dreaming.
purple belt obsession.
Yeah. Yep.
But at the same time, it's like an addiction.
Yeah.
And so though it was fun.
feels unhealthy a little bit. I
feels-
felt that too,
yeah,
even
it's
a little bit.
too much.
Sacrificing other things in life to be on the mats and to train
Yeah.
really hard all the time and I felt that. I feel like where I'm at now as a black belt, it's a more comfortable, mature approach to the whole thing where, oh, so what? I didn't do this or that because I got other stuff going on in my life. It just kind of feels like, and then you show up to the mat and it's not such a smothering experience. You're kind of,
There's not as much pressure to perform. You just
and there's
come
just
and
not
do
as
what
much,
you do.
and there's not as much pressure in general because your skills allow you to be in a spot
Yeah,
where
and
you're
I
not
think,
getting
like,
smashed and choked and
The
beat up so hard all the
mature
time.
sign of being a black belt, which would basically hit you as a brown belt, is when you're on the mat, you're on the mat. And when you're off the mat, you're off the mat.
Yeah.
OTM,
Yep.
Off the
OTM,
mat.
and OTM.
OTM.
And balance.
Balance, yep.
You have a balanced life.
All right, we got a few more minutes here. Do you have a few more minutes? Should we hit one more?
Sure. Ask
I
one more.
just liked this one.
Okay.
All right, so this guy's name was Gustotron. which I
What's up,
liked.
Gusto?
Gustotron. How do
He
you
likes
feel?
Transformers.
Maybe, yeah. How do you feel about people referring to their instructors as professor, or in the case of Coral and Red Belt, master? It
Chris
seems in
loves it.
recent times some jiu-jitsu players are really against those titles. Personally, I don't think they're superior authority or anything. Professor simply means teacher, right? I once had a conversation about this with a well-known Coral belt, and he basically said, I'm nobody's master, but I've been training long enough to be considered a master of the art, a source with a lot of experience and knowledge.
I agree with that Corral Belt's assessment. I will say this. I was one of the first Americans who, as I knew a black belt, told people to call me coach. People would ask me this. I felt that whole professor thing was an uncomfortable thing. Then IBJJF changed it where I think you have to be third or fourth to be called a professor. I don't know. But then, okay, then in this other sense, what is a professor? It's somebody that a university system has granted that they have reached this PhD level of knowledge. Now, I could say if I add up all my hours on the mat, my hours teaching and all that stuff, I definitely am the equivalent of a PhD in the jiu-jitsu. So if you want to call me professor, that's fine. If you want to call me coach, that's fine. If you want to call me Chris, that's cool too. I just don't want to rest on a title. If
But
that makes sense.
in Portuguese, do you know, John?
A professor
I think
just means
it
teacher.
just means teacher.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't necessarily
Yep.
matter if you are teaching kindergarten.
Right.
So they might be calling you kindergarten teacher.
Yep.
So I don't really care. I'm like, call me whatever you want. I remember one of my students
Like
came over,
guru
and he was like,
Indonesian.
what should I call you? And I said, you can call me Queen. I don't know, whatever you want to call me.
I think the master one too. It's like a semantical issue where like there's a cultural, where the abusive culture within a hierarchical structure
Yes.
has added this meaning to the word,
A layer of weight that doesn't need to be
a
there.
layer of weight that's not even dictionary definition there.
Right.
Because so the word master, right, can be like master slave situation, but it
Master,
also
yes.
means like someone with a lot of experience,
Right.
right?
And they used
So that
to, and they call the masters competition
Yes.
for over 30.
people
It
with a
used
lot
to
of
be called
experience.
seniors.
Yes, it used to be 30 to 35 was masters, and then 35 and over was seniors 1, 2, 3. And then they figured out,
Which
well,
insulted
Americans don't like
Americans.
being called seniors,
Yep.
but
So you go,
the
master.
Brazilians didn't really know that.
I see.
So it's like a whole
Yeah.
cultural thing.
But then, like, if you're in one of these unhealthy hierarchical structures, the word now becomes master and slave.
Right. It becomes
And I think it's like you got to be careful where you're using it.
it's a
and
dominance
how you're
title.
using it.
And it's also like how in the Filipino and Indonesian arts, you call them guru.
Mm-hmm.
And when our Western mind hears guru, it's like, oh, you're spiritually well. But all that means is teacher
Right.
over there. Just like sifu in the Chinese.
Sensei in Japanese.
But Americans make that title and add this hierarchical weight.
Kung Fu Panda,
like
love that movie.
Sensei in Japanese too.
Sifu.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yes.
So like the other things when we were talking about the, I think one time we were bringing up like bowing before training.
Yes.
And so the deal here is that you should be aware of the culture of
The
the place
culture
that you're
in
Yes.
which you're in.
and
Yes.
follow suit out of respect of you being a visitor.
When
to
in
the culture.
Rome, do as the Romans.
And then if you have your own school, do whatever you want. is
Don't be
what
an
the answer
a-hole.
is, right?
Yeah.
Don't be an a-hole, Tobin.
Yeah, I won't. I'll try not to.
That's what I would say. And wherever I go and teach, sometimes they'll ask me, would you want us to line up prisoners? I always say, I want to do whatever you regularly do.
Nice.
If that means lining up by rank, bowing in, then that's what we do. If it doesn't mean that, then we don't.
And you visit more gyms and more different gym cultures than anybody probably knows with
Certainly.
traveling
Probably.
and teaching
A lot,
seminars
yes.
and not having our own place. You teach at other places.
The one thing I definitely think I have from 20 years of traveling everywhere around the world,
Just
sometimes 25, sometimes 3 places a month, but domestically, abroad, up to 3 times a year. I've been to so many gyms, and I feel like for a while, like I have my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the grappling world. Just from overhearing what people are talking about and all this, which names come up, which styles come up, which things come in and out and all that. And I can usually tell if Academy is going to be successful or not from when the guy picks me up at the airport.
Cool. Well, I certainly think you fit the description of a source of a lot of experience and knowledge as far as being a master.
I ain't calling him master.
There's no way she's calling me master.
I might
You can
refer
call
to
me
you as a
master.
master, but I'm not sure I'm going to call you master. Master,
No.
master.
I mean,
4
again,
tacos and plantains. Can you bring 4 tacos and plantains to master?
the term I like the most, if we're going to have a term, is coach.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jocelyn
All
calls
right.
me coach.
I like coach the most.
I like coach.
But you're going to
Coach
be
is
a
fine.
formal master when you get your coral belt. I know you don't care about having your coral belt, but I think it's super cool.
It's interesting.
I think it's cool.
It's interesting.
We can cut this out if you want, but have you made it clear who's going to give you your coral belt?
No.
No.
Have
Are you
no
leaving
idea.
that up to the powers that be,
You
like we
might
just
not get it.
suggested?
I might
hearing?
not even get it. We don't know, right? I can't ask.
That's how you
I'll
want
ask.
it to be.
You can have other people ask.
I'm not going to have anyone ask.
But could other people say, "Hey, Chris, it reached the time"?
I don't
and-
know.
Because
I can't control
can
other
we
people.
just say
Right.
that maybe having it might be good for business?
Maybe.
I think I think more than that, it's just and do.
But even if we're just going to think about it, let's remove you from the situation and just think we have a martial arts business. We have one of the first American corral belts that is our head coach.
Well, you already have that. It's just you don't have the belt.
No, but when we're able to say that,
I
it's
know,
like,
I know.
oh no,
Anyway,
it's a thing.
you can opt to chop that out of the podcast if you want.
Yeah, I don't care.
Whatevs, bros. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything
All
because
right.
it's not important. Don't you understand? None of this is important. Just erase the whole podcast, John. Do away with the whole thing.
Nice, I love it.
Corral belt ain't gonna stop a mushroom cloud.
That's
Shit.
right.
Shit. There ain't going to be no corral belts.
Nice. Cool. Well,
Pound,
like, and subscribe.
Hey guys, so just a reminder that Chris and I are both available for private lessons. If you're interested, go ahead and email me at info@combatbase.com. Also, if you'd like to have either one of us out for a seminar, you can do that as well. Combat Base patches available at combatbase.com. 2 different patches that we have. And I also brought our board shorts just in case you want to get some. We have a few pairs left for summertime.